The LA riots might look like chaos, but are they really part of a master plan? A CIA alum will expose the terrorist sleeper cells lying in wait thanks to Joe Biden.
How thoughtful of Biden to bring a little bit of Afghanistan back to California.
Intelligence agencies like the CIA should have protected us from this kind of invasion. A military strategist will give us his playbook to fix the deep state.
Targeting terrorists instead of Americans would be a good start.
And you know what? At least one person is glad that the riots have sparked back up in Los Angeles. Our Julio Rosas is back in his element, and he'll be batched in from ground zero.
You know, it sounds terrible to say this, but make that two people, if I'm actually honest, because I haven't been this entertained since 2020, especially since I'm not there anymore.
Blaze News The Mandate starts right now. Good evening, Patriots. I'm Jill Savage, joined as always by editor-in-chief and riot spectator, Matthew Peterson.
Yes, well, I mean, this is one of those things where I do enjoy watching it because until this is stopped, it won't stop. And, you know, people have to step up. So let's accelerate this.
And we were talking about the footage. It actually looks like Iraq or Afghanistan a little bit. You know, it's not too far off. But the Biden border, it wasn't just open to migrants from Latin America. Our guest believes that thousands of highly trained terrorists snuck in as well. So Sarah Adams is a former CIA targeter and author of Benghazi, Know Thy Enemy. So Sarah, thanks so much for joining our show. So we look at this mainstream media narrative that's out there, and they were saying, oh, the riots, they were kicking off due to all of the ICE deportations, right? Karen Bass even went on CNN earlier today and said as much. So do you think that there are other factors at play here, or should we just kind of believe the Karen Basses of the world?
No, I mean, there's multiple things taking advantage of these protests. Obviously, there's just the paid kind of far left elements who fund these, but also terrorists are taking advantage of a lot of the protests starting after the attacks in Israel in October 2023. Being a part of the propaganda, embedding themselves within the actual protesters, and then running different campaigns. They've done some for pro-Hamas. They've done some around Afia Siddiqui. She's Lady Al-Qaeda, who's detained in the United States. And then they even did some around, I don't know if you remember in St. Louis, there's a gentleman on death row. And last fall, the Al-Qaeda got involved in that to make more relationships with the Black Lives Matter movement. So all these movements have some sort of relationship and they're coming together. And really the propaganda is bring down, you know, the evil colonial empire, you know, which is the United States.
You know, Sarah, I just was really impressed the last few days with, you know, seeing our old friend again, the actual professional agitators pulling, you know, mini color revolution once again. And, you know, I don't think you even need to be a trained professional to see this. If you've watched a lot of the 2020 riots and you're just a regular person, and then you watch what we've seen the last few days, you see professional, you know, agitators. So, I mean, I didn't know that we'd see it again, right? It did sort of disappeared for a while, at least at this scale. So do you think that this is going to increase, or, you know, has this run its course?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to increase, not just the professional agitators. Remember, they make money off of it. Some of these people, this is their full-time job, right? But also, there are bigger plans for the United States, right? There are big terrorist attacks coming up, and a piece of it is to bring the public in to protest and boycott the government and to actually back the terrorists and to say, yeah, we deserve this. You know, it's like, I don't know if you saw when the letter to America that Osama bin Laden had put out many years ago, like last year, it went viral. It went viral, right? Because they have an audience now who are easy to manipulate. And a lot of that is to do with TikTok and things like that. But it's something we should be very concerned about because the terrorists are being very proactive about it.
Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit more because you do think an actual terrorist attack is on the horizon. And I know that you wrote an open letter to the U.S. intelligence community. So what should we be looking for as citizens here? What should we be trying to focus on? Because, again, we know that there's so much information and disinformation out there. Just tell the American people what we can actually do about this.
Yeah, I want the American people to know this is kind of their job now, because what I put in the letter is the US government right now has the wrong leader of Al-Qaeda and the wrong leader of ISIS. Think about that for a minute. So we can't trust them to thwart this when they don't even know who's running these groups. So what we like to tell the public is, it's really that, I know it's lame, but see something, say something, right? All these terrorists do dry runs, they do surveillance. If something is off, report it, right? It might be off, and then prepare, right? Get first aid training. If you're into firearms, get the training you need. Be confident, in the tools that you have at your disposal, because the more you can be resilient, the better you can take care of your family and your community.
So, Sarah, why is it that the intelligence agencies in the United States are so recalcitrant? Like, why do you have to write this open letter to them? Where are these? Why?
Sadly, the first thing really came from the fall of Afghanistan and the fact that we gave up 98% of our intelligence collection. So we rely on the Taliban right now for counterterrorism information. And then with the fall of Syria, we rely again on a terrorist government for intelligence. And actually, the majority of the attackers for the upcoming Al-Qaeda homeland plot trained in Afghanistan and in Syria. And in both countries, our intelligence community is completely dark about what's going on.
So I know we'll talk about this a little bit more with our next guest, and that'll be CIA specific. But what if you're trying to advise the Trump administration right now, right? We just saw Donald Trump do his big Middle East tour, and we're trying to repair relations over there, you could say, and make sure that they're, at least somewhat friendly to us. What advice would you have right now for the administration and what they can do? Because, they might be playing as our friends right now, but you don't know how long those alliances will last.
Yeah, I really think his advisors are being dishonest with him. It's really one of the key issues, of course, is Iran, right? So Iran is working with both the Taliban and Al-Qaeda against us. They're not up against the ropes. He's being lied to about that. They approved the Syrian blitzkrieg. The interesting part is Iran moved its proxies to Afghanistan and to train in Afghanistan. Then the blitzkrieg happened. And now there's all this narrative, oh yeah, the new president of Syria pushed out the Iranians. That was all done in advance. That's all part of the plan. And we're getting played by, first off, terrorists. Like, think about it. Our intelligence community is being played by the Taliban, and you want to trust them to go up against Russia and China? I mean, it's a huge problem. And so I really think there needs to be some honesty going to the president. And one of the biggest things people need to be honest with him is that the bin Ladens are running the show, and the bin Ladens who are coming to attack us. And do you want to be the next president with the huge 9/11 bin Laden plot, as your legacy? I wouldn't want it.
Right. So Hamza bin Laden, right, is supposedly alive and well, and running things, right, and not gone away. Why is there no public bounty or talk about this from U.S. intelligence agencies?
Yeah, they still have, like, on the record, he's got a $1 million bounty, which is kind of laughable. I mean, he brings in more than $1 million a month of just U.S. taxpayer dollars. But the fact is, they won't be honest that he's alive. So they reported him dead in 2019. That was actually a ruse by Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri to protect Hamza. He had done the same for Saad bin Laden, so he's also alive. And then another thing was done that was really interesting. So Hamza bin Laden's mother was in Saudi Arabia, and the Saudi government told her, hey, we will not give you kind of like welfare unless it's proven that your son is dead. So she told the wives of Hamza, start talking about it on the phone, because then foreign governments will collect it, and then I can have proof for Saudi Arabia. So both Zawahiri and Hamza's mom did ruses that information went into our intelligence community, and that's what they're basing their assessments off of, which is crazy. They fell for terrorist propaganda.
All right. So what I'm hearing from you is we don't know who the actual leader of the Taliban is. We don't know who's actually leading Al-Qaeda. We have people out there that are bin Laden's actual, all of his children out there. You would think that we would say, okay, you know what? Those, at least we need to take those seriously for sure. Why are we having this conversation that we can't go through and even find the bin Laden kids? This blows my mind that we are here, the biggest superpower in the world, right? And that was part of the intelligence failure and part of Bill Clinton back in the day. Like we would get attacked and he would go through and okay, well, we'll do a little thing over here. But they had to make it almost like bigger and better, if you will, from their perspective to actually gain something from their own people and say, oh no, we can go through and actually make a huge impact. So if we know that that's the way that these people operate, why do we have to have this conversation?
Yeah, it's almost like we have to wait again for an attack to happen, right? There are 4 bin Laden sons in Afghanistan planning against us. And that's the second generation. Remember, their sons are now grown up. They have sons in their 20s. So there's third generation bin Ladens, including Hassan bin Laden, the son of Saad bin Laden, involved in the upcoming plot on U.S. soil, right? So it isn't just one bin Laden this time. There's 5, 6, 7, 8 bin Ladens. And it's just very frustrating that it's almost like we just have to sit back and watch history repeat itself. Like we have nobody stepping up to help stop this.
So, Sarah, what are you warning about for the audience in terms of what this next wave terrorist attack looks like? I mean, to be fair, for most people's understanding of this, it's been a while, and people are complacent. They understand like these Antifa type groups are out there with these riots. People don't like that. But I think just for a lot of regular people, it just seems pretty distant at this point. But what do you think people should be expecting?
Sure. One thing that is really important for the public to be aware of, and the terrorists did this in during the Israel attacks, is they're going to target first responders, and they want to make it so first responders can't get to the victims, right? So you have to kind of think about, okay, what if there's no response to where I am for many, many hours, right? Like, how can I sustain myself? Can I do basic medical? Now, then if you're a first responder, a lot of our law enforcement are trained on active shooter, which is one shooter. These terrorists trained in 5 to 7, 8 to 10 man teams. So if you're not having drills where there's multiple shooters in multiple parts of your city and training and practicing that way, right? You're not going to be prepared and you're going to be shocked. And then the last part is, which Americans aren't prepared for at all, is there's going to be suicide bombings involved in this plot. A lot of them will be focused on federal buildings, but then there's a huge aviation plot again that involves suicide vests. Our TSA isn't taking this seriously. They haven't improved airport security. So the millimeter wave scanners stop the suicide vest. You cannot walk through it. There's been no effort to put more people through those scanners so you can walk through like a magnetometer just fine, get on an airplane with one of these vests. So until our government starts also taking this plot seriously, we're in a pretty bad situation.
Well, I know in your open letter, you were talking about their job for the intelligence community. It's not about all the policies or promotions or anything they want. It's about protecting the American people. So I'm listening to you say this right now and saying, oh, the first responders are going to be at risk and just trying to make sure that you can actually get the help that you need. Is this a complete failure of the intelligence agencies? Then how do you describe that when we know that their job is to keep people safe?
Yeah, well, it's actually planned that way. So I don't know all the pieces of it, but after the attack happens, basically the Taliban is going to release information that's going to show the CIA is complicit. It's going to show the U.S. government funded this attack, and they've been making it happen. They've been seeding in misinformation. So the terrorists have been really smart. So the public is going to blame the government, even if they've been naive, right? Because you also think CIA has every piece of information. They're not this stupid. Well, this time they've been this stupid. And remember that during the first 9/11, the public were very upset that those terrorists were issued visas, right? They didn't like sneak into our country. Our government let them in. They let them stay when they weren't going to school or they're doing things that didn't make sense, right? So they're going to do the same. So it is a failure, and really, they're going to get the blame for it. There's going to be no way they can get out of this, especially now the money is still flowing to the Taliban. It's getting diverted to this plot. Like, they're using our own cash to carry out this attack this time.
This is all very remarkable stuff and things that we just need to talk about, a lot more. So thank you for coming on and talking about this. I'm curious, last question, when it comes to the Trump administration overall, where are do you see some bright spots, some good changes that have happened in the national security, complex, and, what would you like to see happen in the future?
Well, I think a lot of us are excited about who's going to be the new head of the National Counterterrorism Center, Joe Kent. But the Senate hasn't confirmed him yet, right? Like, we don't have these actual counterterrorism professionals at the helm leading this, which is frustrating. So the Senate needs to go and do their jobs and confirm these people. Because think about it, we're 4, 5, 6 months waiting on him to be confirmed when he could be helping get ahead of these things. So I do find it very frustrating. We're delaying work on counterterrorism.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that, Sarah, because we were actually having that exact discussion earlier this afternoon. Hey, has Joe Kent, has he actually gone through and been confirmed yet? No, he has not. Sarah Adams, Benghazi, Know Thy Enemy. Go pick up that book. Sarah, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
When we come back, it'll be more CIA and Deep State right after this. Well, LA riots are back, but you'll remember 5 years ago, George Floyd riots, they kicked it all off in Minneapolis, and BlazeTV has dropped something that you have to see. It's the first time ever now. We actually have some Minnesota cops that are still on force, they're still in uniform, and they have broken their silence about what really went down that night. And they were there in the 3rd precinct, right? We saw it all get abandoned and burned, all the mostly peaceful protests that we're seeing again. But now they're speaking anonymously on camera. They're telling us the truth about Derek Chauvin, about Governor Walz, and all the chaos that went down. They say that Chauvin was actually set up. They say that Governor Walz failed them, and the city that they actually swore to protect has turned its back on them. So you can see the first 10 minutes for free right now on YouTube. Just search BlazeTV Minneapolis. But if you want to see the full unfiltered investigation, you have to be a BlazeTV subscriber. So head over to blazetv.com/BNT to get $20 off your subscription. Sign up, support unrelenting journalism, and see what the media won't show you. It's blazetv.com/BNT. During his first appearance on the show, strategic and military advisor Edward Luttwak broke down that the CIA is far more concerned with its own preservation than with American security interests abroad. But where do we go from here? Luttwak is back with more. So thanks so much again for joining us. That conversation that we had last time was thrilling. We could go through and we could really see the base layer of what the CIA wasn't doing. So this time, let's go ahead and jump right into the Trump administration and what you think should be done to actually reform the CIA.
Well, the director of CIA appointed by President Trump started, from my point of view, very well, because he issued an invitation to all employees of the CIA to exercise early retirement if they so wished, so they'll be paid, I believe it was till September, with health care and pay and so on. Basically, he invited the personnel to leave. That shows to me that he understands that many new people need to be brought in who are socially, big words, sociologically different than their predecessors. That is to say, they are Americans, many of them young, perhaps not many of them, perhaps of any age, who have lived abroad and who have learned languages or learned countries or both, preferably, and who have done sort of interesting things around the world and who have some ability to persuade foreigners to act as sources of information and ancillary things of that sort. In other words, the classic personnel who should be working for an intelligence agency, as opposed to hiring people who know nothing because they have no past and therefore they're easy to clear, as I explained, and then trying to teach them how to get the finger feel of how to deal with foreigners, how to talk to a Neapolitan, how to talk to somebody from Milano, how to talk to an Arab from the city of Jeddah, which has had international contacts for centuries, versus an Arab who comes from a more settled background and in a country where there were no foreigners in or out and different things. So feel, what you need are people with feel. Secondly, people who have sold things like sold themselves to girlfriends or boyfriends and things, and sold their company stuff. So they know how to sell, because you have to sell. And finally, by choosing that particular agency, as opposed to other worthy federal agencies, they're saying that they're willing to take risks. They're the kind of people who don't flee from risks. Of course, they should be prudent, it's hard, but not the kind of people who suffer from an excess of caution. They're willing to try things and be bold. And in fact, there are ways of testing that. I think I mentioned it, which is, taking people and sending them to a tourist city like Athens or Bangkok, and then asking them to go around and take pictures of monuments, except they don't have a smartphone, so to persuade people who are looking at those monuments to take their picture and then send it to an email address and things like that. Very minimal things. There's a battery of such tests that determine where people know how to handle themselves in the very first stages of a recruitment, because the aim is to recruit people, human sources. So the new director of CIA, I have not had the opportunity to meet him, as I met practically all his predecessors, and I have not tried to do that. But he may he started very well, and he may proceed down these lines, as he should.
Now, Edward, let me just lay out my big concern here, and I'm very curious as to your thoughts, is that the CIA, among other agencies, I mean, these agencies are all sort of entangled together to some degree, and there's, factions within the national security community. But just to take CIA, the problem I think a lot of Americans have is, how is this organization going to be held accountable? It certainly looks great what Ratcliffe is doing. He seems like a great guy. He's obviously doing some good things that you just laid out. But what about the structural problem of these agencies and taking CIA as the particular example? Do you think that there's some structural reform that needs to take place if this agency is to remain accountable in a healthy way to the executive?
That may be true, that some structural has to be done, but there's not within the CIA, or indeed within the intelligence community, as they call it, which in my view should become not a village of 17 agencies, but perhaps 2. Mm-hmm. This is a side issue. So who should be sort of directed to ensure this? It is the intelligence committees of House and Senate, whose members have done all kinds of things, including trading on their supposed inside knowledge. You all remember the Mr. Schiff, of how he kept going on television and hinting that because he's on the intelligence committee, he knows all these secrets about Trump and the 72 ladies and things of that sort. No, instead of doing that, they should be doing their job. They have all the power necessary. The Senate and House Intelligence Committees can summon anybody, demand to see any document. There's no limits on them. So it's just a matter of exercising their responsibilities. And it's a matter of the nation looking at them and demanding from them that they do their job, which is to make sure that the intelligence agencies act in the national interest. Why do you specifically need them to do that? Is because they operate in secrecy. And secrecy is used for two purposes. Purpose number one is, of course, to not disclose our sources of information. If we have recruited Dr. Esfandari in Shiraz or Isfahan, we don't want the journalists to print that Mr. Esfandari is giving us information that he gets from his son, who's an Revolution Guard. So safeguard sources by all means, protect them, but we, at the same time, the need for secrecy in operations does not mean that the overall conduct of the agency should be wrapped in secrecy. No, it should be investigated confidentially under classified closed meetings. And it is up to the rest of Congress to make sure that the people who go on this intelligence committee are not people like Schiff, who are only interested on going out and talking to television to hint and suggest that he knows dirty secrets. No, there are serious people. There are serious people in Congress who can be trusted to do this job. And the job is to make sure and necessarily investigate. They have staffs. Everybody's cleared, and they can make these investigations. Now, you remember that a long time ago, before either of you were born probably, there was the Church Committee. The Church Committee investigated the CIA, and the director of CIA, Mr. Colby, decided to reveal everything. And he revealed it in such a way, in such a mass of events and so on, the whole Vietnam story and some torture, killings, whatever, investigations. And then it became a gigantic scandal. People thought about closing it all down. Then they realized they couldn't close it all down. And that was an example that should not be followed, in my view, because it was reckless and unlimited and unnecessary. But it does prove that Congress can penetrate, can get all the information it needs. All it needs is that you have to have senators and congressmen who are seriously interested in getting to the important information. That's all it takes.
You've brought Congress in, so let's go ahead and add another layer.
I don't hear you. No sound.
Let's go through and add another layer of information. Can you hear yours?
Sound.
Go ahead and try.
Oh, can you hear me?
But I can't hear you.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
I cannot hear you.
No. All right. We will try this once again because, MP, what we are going to talk about is USAID and the fact that they go through and they've unveiled another layer to the American people. This is one of the biggest scandals that we've seen so far. And I think it's like a lot of the intel community already knew about this, but this is one of the things that we have now kind of brought to the forefront in this Trump administration.
Yeah, so USAID, we were curious of what Luvok would say about that, and we'll ask him another time. You have a lot of money being spent on NGOs throughout the world, through the State Department and otherwise, and that is something that also the CIA has been involved with in various ways, in very serious ways and numerous ways throughout the years. So this is another example of thinking about accountability, the flow of this money that in many cases, as we know now, has been used really for left-leaning ideological projects throughout the world, or, a specific sort of foreign policy that, certainly not the Trump administration, the opposite of Trump's foreign policy, that sort of metastasized over the last few decades with the people that Luvok was talking about, the sort of people who don't know other languages and sit behind desks and go to Georgetown, fancy school and talk in the abstract. And that's been disastrous. And it's interesting that, just recently, that's been the curtain was pulled back, that USAID became the first thing that really Doge and company in the opening weeks of the administration was revealed. And that's something we have to talk about him more.
Yeah, and now I'm sure something completely unrelated. We'll go check in with the LA riots with Julio Rosas coming out after this, because he is right there in the thick of it. We'll have Julio next. In the least surprising move of the weekend, Governor Newsom sprinted to the defense of all of the rioters, the illegals, the agitators, and dared President Trump to come at me, bro.
Get your hands off these poor people. They're just trying to live their lives, man. trying to live their lives, paying their taxes, been here 10 years. The fear, the horror. The hell is this guy? Come after me, arrest me. Let's just get it over with. Tough guy. You know, I don't give a damn. But I care about my community. I care about this community. The hell are they doing? These guys need to grow up. They need to stop. And we need to push back. And I'm sorry to be so clear, but that kind of bloviating is exhausting. So, Tom, arrest me.
Newsom has been very passive towards the people wreaking havoc in the streets of Los Angeles. Blaze Media's national correspondent Julio Rosas is actually there right now on those streets, and he joins us right now. So, Julio, just take us through what you've seen. I know Matthew Peterson here gave you a call on Saturday night. So what have you seen since you've arrived in Los Angeles?
So last night we were actually in this very area. We're all over by Alameda Street, which is close to City Hall. And there were still things happening late into the night. I mean, the police had separated kind of the main group by blocking off the bridges that go over the 101. And so it just kind of led to skirmishes, and rioters were still setting fires. They were still throwing things at police as they were driving by. And then things kind of ended around 1 a.m. Earlier this morning. And so right now, another large crowd, which is, I don't know if you can see behind me. They had a march again through kind of the downtown, by the federal building, and it's actually right now. Truthfully, it is actually peaceful, if not tense at times, because they're having like a little mini concert behind me.
So, Julio, first off, thanks for going out there for us on such short notice. I think, last night, your videos and everything we saw, it was alarming to a lot of us, because the last few days is the first time we've really seen this actual playbook, since 2020 at this scale. I think I'm right in saying that. It's been a while, and all of a sudden it looks like our old friends are back in action. But what are you expecting for tonight? Do you think this subsides, or, looking and hearing what you see on the ground, do you think this is going to keep going into the week?
I mean, it depends. I mean, there were more raids by ICE and HSI and Border Patrol today. Apparently, there was about 12, and it didn't garner the reaction that those similar operations had on Friday, Saturday, and a little bit into Sunday. So I think it just depends on how quickly people are able to respond to when they see it, because the reason why that things escalate so quickly during these operations is because there's all these social media accounts and networks that alert people that, hey, this is going down at this exact address. And so it really just depends on how effective these far left networks are. And it also just depends on whether or not they want to actually confront not just the police, but the military that could even comprise of the Marines. And so we'll see what happens when that deployment actually goes into full effect.
Yeah, we heard that all the reports this afternoon that we would see the Marines being deployed there to Los Angeles. So you haven't seen anything of that quite yet. But what do you expect to see? Just knowing the area that you're in right now and what they could potentially be doing.
Well, at a minimum, the rallies are going to continue. I mean, school's out for all the students. I think this is the turnout's a little bit smaller today just because it is Monday as opposed to the weekend. But actually, right before we went on air, the city just finished cleaning up the 4 to 5 Waymo cars that were set on fire just yesterday. So it took a long time for that cleanup to happen. And so I think once everything kind of calms down after the deployment, then I think it's a matter. The next question is, what's the next city going to kind of experience a similar level of unrest? Because I talked to a guy at ICE today, and I said, hey, is what's happening in Los Angeles going to kind of tone things down for your guys' operations? And he said no. He said no. We're still going full ahead.
So do you have any beat on how the Marines and how the National Guard is going to be used, or maybe is started to be used yet?
Well, because of the way that they were authorized, because it wasn't underneath the Insurrection Act.
Right.
And so they do have federal powers that, when called upon by the president, as opposed to the governor, So they are kind of limited in basically just protecting federal infrastructure and federal property. And that does help, believe it or not, because then officers who would be tasked with being in that defensive posture would then be able to actually go out and address any public safety concerns. And so I would imagine the Marine Corps, again, being authorized underneath that would be in a similar position.
Well, it's interesting because we have LA Mayor Karen Bass, of course, jumping back into this story once again. She blames ICE for all of the riots that are happening. Let's go ahead and watch that from earlier today.
I just have to say that if you dial back time and go to Friday, if immigration raids had not happened here, we would not have the disorder that went on last night. I will tell you that it is peaceful now, but we do not know where and when the next raids will be. That is the concern, because people in the city have a rapid response network. If they see ICE, they go out and they protest. And so it's just a recipe for pandemonium that is completely unnecessary. Nothing was happening here. Los Angeles was peaceful before Friday.
Julio, if it wasn't for all those ICE agents out there trying to do their jobs, everything would have been fine, according to Karen Bass.
Yeah, that's absolutely not true. I mean, I was here back in February where there were protests, not just for a normal enforcement operation. And there were, one of the school walkouts, because it was February, one of the high school walkouts made its way to the front of City Hall, and there was a bunch of fighting, and a student got stabbed by another student. I mean, it was absolute chaos. And even just a couple weeks ago, here in Los Angeles, it wasn't related to ICE or immigration, but police tried to break up this party that I guess didn't have a permit or something. And the party goers decided, well, we're just going to wreak havoc in the neighborhood, and there were no arrests that time. So this idea that, oh, well, it's just the federal government's fault, that's just not true. Just even from earlier this year, even to a couple weeks ago.
Julio, we have to mention it because we all lived through it. You in particular, Trump 1.0. Sort of let the states handle their own unrest. It was very controversial for Tom Cotton or, write an op-ed saying, God forbid we do what we've always done, which is send in more force to take care of the problem. So when you look at what's going on now, I mean, how different is Trump 2.0 from 2020?
No, it's pretty different. I mean, the posture is a lot more stronger. I mean, he was deferring initially to the to the governors to deploy the National Guard, and that led to the developments of things like Chaz, CHOP in Seattle. The National Guard in Minneapolis wasn't really out in full force until Friday, after basically a full work week. So the fact that he activated the National Guard on day 2 instead of waiting a few more days, because clearly Karen Bass wasn't going to ask for it, and Gavin Newsom wasn't going to call it in, and clearly things were getting out of hand. I mean, the chief of police just yesterday said that they're going to probably have to work with more National Guard because they lost control of the city for large parts of the day yesterday and Saturday. So it's definitely a lot more decisive, right? And I can tell you that when things spiral out of control, every minute counts when it comes to a response, and when it comes to actually being able to allow people to have a protest like they're having right now. And so far they haven't done anything overtly illegal, so there's no need to crack down on them. But when you let it fester for so long, it could lead to violence and massive destruction.
Yeah, and you know what? The sun is still shining there. I think that things could definitely take a turn once the sun goes down. Follow Julio Rosas and The Blaze on X. I'm sure that Julio will be posting a lot of videos out there. He already has. Julio, thanks so much.
Thanks.
When we come back, you've seen what's going on in LA yourself right now. When we come back, we'll get your responses to what's happening and what actually needs to be done right after this. Unless you're a far-left Democrat, you know that Los Angeles is a hellscape right now. So I posted on X. The riots continue. So what needs to be done in LA? And all your responses came in. Freedom by Principle replies, the arrests are elite communist Democrats, weak Republican politicians. We need to defund the NGOs and then also arrest the organizers, leakers, and those involved in the destruction and obstruction. A lot of the elite commies out there, MP, there's a lot of them around right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we'll refrain. I'll wait a few minutes to talk about this more. But what he recognizes is that these are organized efforts, and we need to go after the organizers.
Yeah. CA replies, blue collar citizens should be doing this over taxes, property, and income. If we care as much about our country as we claim, then we would be in the streets demanding they all be deported, ending the excessive taxes, forcing government accountability. Instead, we tweet, which I thank you for your reply there, CA, but I absolutely hear your point.
I've said this for years, that if the American people actually saw behind the veil and just it was in their face how things actually run in a lot of parts of our government and how our politicians are, and actually saw the system, with X-ray vision, there would be a revolution of the scale that he's talking.
Yeah, there's a T-tax, there's a stamp tax, everything could go back into the day. We're doing so much more right now. Let's go ahead and end with Reef, who says that foreigners bearing foreign flags committing acts of violence on American soil are not protesters. They are not rioters, nor are they immigrants. They are armed invaders waging war. Any citizen giving them aid or committing acts of violence alongside these invaders are traitors bearing arms against their country. This is not a civil matter. This is a military matter. Act accordingly. Well, I can say the Marines are being deployed as of today out in Los Angeles, according to a lot of reports out there. So some military is going to act accordingly.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing about that comment is that, I agree in general that you have a bunch of people who aren't from the country waving the flag of another country and committing acts of violence. This already was an invasion of tens of millions of people into this country. But the odd thing about the riots is it's not that point isn't valid that guy on Twitter made. The other thing about the riots now is I doubt that a lot of the organizers, right, are actually from these foreign countries. Make no mistake, these are are anarchists or communists who really just hate America, and possibly other groups as well, and want to see it torn down. So they're using this example as an excuse. And what's actually interesting to me is there's actually not a ton of people yet, anyway, out there protesting from these other countries. They're sort of pawns in the game, and I think Americans should realize that and act accordingly.
I'm going to let the audience in a little bit behind the curtain right now, because we knew we were going to talk about terrorism with Sarah Adams today. We knew we were going to talk a little bit about the deep state with Edward Luttwak, but we didn't know that the Los Angeles riots were going to spring up over the weekend. And it actually all fits together very well into one big puzzle. So take us through, MP, just how we need to fix all of this. I'll just ask you what I asked the audience earlier today.
Yeah, there's one way to fix this, and there's a lot of things that need to be done, but there's one way to fix this, and it's absolutely reprehensible. It's outrageous that it hasn't been fixed yet. The federal government now, under the Trump administration, needs to do its job and go after the people who organize these riots. This is the maddening thing. It is very clear, even if you are not an expert in anything, if you just watch the TV, if you saw what happened in 2020 and you see what happened in LA the last few days, you know damn well that these are paid organizers who have been trained to stir up the crowds and create these photo ops for their own purposes. We know this. We knew this then. So here, riddle me this. The intelligence agencies are funded to the tune of billions and billions of dollars with your taxpayer money. And they had the balls to go after Trump. They spied on the president of the United States, right? They spied on the opposition candidate because the excuse was that Trump was related to Russia. There was foreign interference in the election. Therefore, they could spy, because they're not supposed to spy on citizens. So they found all kinds of excuses to spy on the right, on Republicans, on Trump, to leak things, to know things they weren't supposed to know for a long time because of this foreign interference, right? Do you think that it would be difficult to make the same case that there's foreign interference in America now, and that maybe we should use the might of the intelligence agencies to, I don't know, go after the organizations that are actively burning down American cities? Could we do that? I'd like to see that happen, because I haven't seen it happen from the right. I've seen the left do that. I've seen the agencies do that with a sitting president of the United States. I've seen them go after opposition domestic candidates, but I have not seen the intelligence agencies actually go after the organized groups that are paid for, probably partly with your own tax dollars, to put riots on like performance art in American cities. And that is ridiculous. That needs to end. These groups all need to, RICO needs to be used. These people need to be found out, exposed, shamed, and thrown in prison.
And when you talk about the intelligence communities, of course, we can go back to the part of the conversation with Letvak earlier today, where he was saying Congress should be the one that they have all the tools at their disposal to go through, because we know the CIA is secretive and they need to have some secrets. Sure, that's fine. But what you need to have is a functioning Congress that is going to make sure that things happen as they need to, hold their feet to the fire and say, you can't do that. You can't go through and go in and spy on the president of the United States. This isn't okay. This is America. And yet we just sit back because we have a completely broken Congress that they won't go through and actually do anything. When was the last time that we saw somebody really held accountable for this?
Yeah, Letvak makes a great point, because this is the constitutional point. So when you have stuff that needs to remain secret, you just need an opposing force, though. You can't just let the agencies do whatever they want in secret. You need the House, which is a different power base, or supposed to have a different power base, because they're elected by you. Those people are supposed to, in behind closed doors, adjudicate among the secrets and say, okay, this is a problem over here. What do you doing over here? And they should be able to demand answers. But of course, what he didn't quite say out loud is that these intelligence committees have often been compromised. You have lots of people on them who shouldn't be there, people who have made money over time and been schmoozing over time, so that they're not really holding the agencies accountable. And of course, in order to do that, you would need to have the political will, the stomach, the desire to actually do your job and see that your own honor and your own worth as a human being comes from doing that job and holding them accountable, rather than just going along with what the blob wants you to do. And so we are in desperate need of that in Congress, to make those committees great again, that actually will hold the intelligence community accountable. And he's right, that's an essential piece. But we are so far from that right now.
But that link absolutely needs to happen, because if you go back to what Sarah Adams was saying, that Bin Laden's kids have grown kids now. We have 3 generations of them. And what are they doing right now? Well, we can pretty much guess what the Bin Ladens are going to try and do. And if we have intelligence failures all over the place, that is not going to end well for the safety and security of the American citizens.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Look, Antifa, too, those networks are foreign. So, again, like I was ranting earlier, you can use, if you think Russia's interfering in elections, look at the money coming from, German, anarchist organizations, or through Canada. There's all kinds of, never mind, like, your classic Islamic radical terrorism, which still exists and is going to pop off again. So there's plenty of reason to really start pushing on these fronts. And, man, I hope we do soon.
Yeah, and we're going to have Chris Bedford back on the show tomorrow. I know everybody missed him today on the show. He will be back tomorrow. And then MP and I are going to make our way out to Washington, D.C. Maybe we can get some answers. We'll try. We'll try and bring them to you. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.